Okay. Alrighty. So it's a little after, call the meeting to order at 12:36 or something like that. I make a motion to open the meeting. Is there a second? Thank you. Keith, you good? Martha, you good? Everybody, okay? Yeah, I'm giving you time there. For those in the audience, we just figured this was a much more comfortable and relaxed way to meet. I'm not a big fan of the bench and people sitting and standing at a podium, so this is a nice way. But raise your hand if you have questions. I'll gladly bring you in and we'll get you a microphone, et cetera. So please don't, this is not to inhibit communication or inhibit participation. And on the Zoom, Marianne Crawford, you're there? Maybe?
Yes, I am.
Great. Unfortunately, Marianne could not join us, but she's here in voice. And then also, James, you're on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
Beautiful. Thank you guys very much. So really the goal of this meeting is to chat a little bit about your plans and what you guys are doing for next year and thoughts. I think I've got a number of things I'd love to discuss, but maybe you could help us a little bit, Josh, as to how your summer was. I don't think I've seen you work as many days on the boat as I've ever seen this summer, so nothing like shortage of labor. These guys didn't say anything to me, by the way. No. I mean, it's been amazing, huh? So how's the summer, and help us a little bit? Oh, sorry. Josh, you got to push that little button, and if you can, yeah, just because of the Zoom, they can't hear you otherwise.
Yes, summer overall, as you all know, the weather was nice, very little rain, so it was a busy summer for day trippers in particular. But it was we got through it like everybody else. Were affected by shortage of help, as you alluded to. But no, overall it went fine. Of course, we a lot of challenges here or there, but I think it was a decent summer for us overall.
Josh, is that what worries you most? Like a lot of businesses, a lot of businesses nowadays, the thing that keeps sort of the people who run the companies awake at night is, where am I going to get people? Is that really? Would you guys say one of your central concerns over time?
It kind of ebbs and flows. Last year, after COVID, we had a tough time finding deckhands.
Yeah.
But last year we were good with licenses. This year we were a little short on licenses. We need licensed mates and captains. Captains fine. We're just pretty much short on mates this year.
Gotcha.
But yeah, it's always a concern, and we start early every year. Job fairs. Jeanette, she has the same thing with the ticket office as well.
Yeah.
But no, it's definitely a concern. We try to keep people. A lot of them are employees in the summer, or younger people. We try to keep them for at least a few years so they get through college, and hopefully we get them returns, as a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Which is always the repeat person is always good, as long as we can keep them for. And Jeanette, same thing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I even sold tickets.
You gotta use the
Oh, sorry.
So yes, it was really difficult for me to have. I know it was difficult for me to get help this year, and a lot of the kids that I had, a lot of the employees that I had were really young, still in high school, and they weren't as responsible as they could have been because they're high school kids.
Yeah, right.
So,
But
yeah,
you had some good ones, I must say.
I did.
Yeah.
I had a lot of good scanners this year. So, but
But you had to direct them more. There were a couple times I said go out there, literally direct them. Stand there.
That's right. No, you're right. And the younger staff needs to be reminded of their responsibilities every day. And so that's a drawback because I'm out there doing that stuff and I have a lot of things to do.
Right.
But I'm hoping that next year is going to be better. Hopefully, as Joshua said, it's like when you hire these young folks, we want them to come back year after year
Right.
because it's a fun place to work, and
Plus,
most
you
of them
make the
do.
investment in them, and
Do. See, that is frustrating because we do. It takes a long time to train them.
Sure.
And when they don't come back the next year, it's kind of disappointing. But what can you do?
I'm just curious, who do you compete with for licensed folks?
Oh, could be anything. The whole maritime industry, tugboats, other ferry companies. It could be
Yeah.
any particular outfit that requires a license.
Right.
And it's tough. Some years are better than others. We've always found that the best ones we've had are the ones that work through the ranks. They start off as a deckhand,
Interesting, yeah,
get
yeah,
enough
yeah.
time, get their
Yeah.
license, and those are always the best ones that
Right,
that
right.
you bring up from the start. But no, there's a lot of good mariners out there. It's just a matter of trying to trying to hire them. It's tight. Yeah, it is. It's
Absolutely.
tough.
Thanks, sorry to digress there.
I'll tell you, the one area that's shocking to me now is bus drivers. And you think, who would ever have thought there'd be a shortage of bus drivers? And it's a huge issue. So, Bill, you got a job.
We have that problem.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. I'm very familiar with it, but you're not a school system, and you're not, I mean, it's a problem.
Or if
So,
you rip them,
Yeah.
you cancel like half their schedule.
Yeah. I've got a number of things I'd love to discuss, but maybe somebody else wants to go first, and probably you guys all do it up, but.
I got a list too, Sven. Let me first start off that I think any problems or challenges are very correctable with Interstate. It has been for decades. There's never been anything adversarial. I think if we would put an RFP out for a ferry company to come in here and do what we wanted, you'd be the choice. Right? So I believe anything we can work with. The first thing is to learn from last summer. Can we get better communication with our police department in advance of a surge in attendance on the boats?
I could have Bill. Could you answer?
Yeah, so,
Bill,
actually.
just speak into the tail.
Yeah, it is like,
Yeah, you haven't used these
I know,
before.
this is.
I know, this is, we have to give you practice.
You'd find
Actually,
a way.
could you go back to the corner and then walk up?
You should put this back at my.
Bill is
seat.
the most obstinate person as far as using mic, but.
Long story.
No, it's not. It's not. No is a two-letter
But
word.
you're correct, it is obstinate.
It is obstinance.
But I actually had worked out a plan with Chief Monahan when I was here because he was looking for, basically numbers to figure out as far as for staffing and so forth. And we had worked that out, and that was in place. And certainly willing to do that with whomever the new chief is from a public safety standpoint of view. I think once you're here for a little while, you kind of get you figure it out pretty quick. But nevertheless, have no problem with that whatsoever.
So that's a preventable anomaly if that ever happened again, by just letting us know well in advance, to the police well in advance to prepare, or?
Well, I
maybe-
mean, to cut right to chase, are you referring to August 8th, or are you referring just in general?
Mostly August 8th.
Okay. There's certain aspects of August 8th I can't go into because of some, obviously, there's some criminal investigation and so forth. However, what I will say on that, the numbers I'm talking to are in general for the regular staffing and planning. That day, it wasn't a lack of communication with the police department at all. We worked with the police department. Matter of fact, we arranged to have additional troopers brought over. I think we got overwhelmed, just like a lot of businesses did. I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at other businesses because we don't have the luxury of shutting down, like, say a bar or a restaurant. We got to deal with what comes at us from that end of it. I will tell you this, we're focused on the lessons learned from that day, and there's a lot of them. And where we're doing it, we've done reviews with our own crew, review with the police department, working with the Coast Guard. Some of the things, so we can't change what happened that day, but we can learn some good positive lessons, and hopefully that it doesn't happen again, or if we do get overwhelmed, we have some places and some things in place for that. And not to go into detail, but to give you a general idea, we listen when people talk. That's why I'm at the council meetings. People are talking about, hey, could you zigzag the lines? There's pros and cons. You zigzag it. Two people don't like each other, seeing each other every 15 minutes. However, I don't think there's any question that, that's an area we need to look at. When we have along the conga line, we'll call it, right, going out and around, to that end, we've already purchased almost $11,000 worth of portable fencing to look in different areas. Exactly how we're going to use them, we're not 100% sure. We're still working through that. But when we do, we're going to have the tools for that. We also went out and engaged with a private security company, which we don't believe we need on all of the boats. However, if we get a situation, where there's a large event that comes up either last minute, whatever it might be, or the 4th of July or Labor Day, that we can put this in place without, with a phone call notice. And to that end, we did that on last Labor Day with this company that we're using, even though we didn't think that we needed it. But on Saturday and Sunday, I said, let's do a trial run with it anyways. We put them in place, we employed them, it went, without any issues, it worked out well. And it was worth doing, so this way here, like I said, whether it be URI coming out for the day, or whether, maybe we get information because of, just like this, that there's, whatever it might be, we can pick up the phone, it's not a matter of, hey, what can you supply and so forth, it's already engaged from that end of it. So, and to be honest with you, we're looking at, like 4th of July, VJ Day weekend, like I said, maybe URI, that we can employ this right away from there. So, so those things are in the works. I guess that's what I ended with this is, we take public safety, very important of our passengers and our crew members. There's a lot for everyone to learn that day. Like I said, we're trying to put our energy into that end of it, so.
Can I just build on that, Mark, for a second? So, Josh, I heard something this year that I've never, ever heard before in my life, and that was some people who took a boat both Saturday and Sunday night, the late boat going back. And their comment back to me, and I don't like to say this in public, but comment back to me was, I will never ride that boat again. The people on it, the manners, the decorum, and literally they were almost visceral about it. They were like, it was just mind-boggling. And I never ever heard that. And it wasn't just one day. These were different times, different occurrences, and some people get a little more excited than others. But I heard it enough that, first of all, thank you for saying you're going to have security on certain days. My strong suggestion would be, based on that, I think it's almost every Saturday and Sunday, like July 4th to VJ weekend, or whatever those, because if we just go for the big ones, these comments that I heard from people were not big weekends. They were, a day of sun, a lot of people on the boat, end of the day, they probably had a little bit too much, maybe during that whole session, during the whole day. And suddenly now they're in a crowded space, and it just became a ride that was not reflective of Interstate, nor reflective of Block Island, I don't think. And so if there was a security person on all those boats, I think that person could at least go up, and I'll take Bill as an example. If he were the guy, he'd go up and say, hey, can we all either take it outside or just, be respectful. But if there's nobody to do that, the volumes just keep going up. So I'd encourage you guys to think about maybe more than just the obvious days, and think about Saturday, Sunday, late boats going back. And I know that that's a hassle and it's hard, but, and you just need somebody in a uniform. It's just about presence. It's just about a big body and coming over and saying, could you just chill out a little bit?
I think the biggest hurdle, Sven, is having it in place that we can pick up a phone and we can implement it without having to go out and look for a company and so forth. So I think the big hurdle we got over is having that in place for that. So I think we could from there. And don't forget, on those last boats, particularly on the weekends, we don't serve any alcohol. We opt to close, sell alcohol on the ferries going back at that end of it. But we're stuck with what comes to us.
I understand that.
So,
I understand that. That's why I'm saying it's not Interstate.
Yeah.
This is about Interstate's image and Block Island's image. And to your point, you didn't ask them to be unruly.
But then this isn't meant to be pointing a finger, but I think as a community, which we're a part of the community, we got to look at, hey, what's coming to us and why is it? And it's a bigger picture. It's not one business or whatever. But like I said, I was on the other side. I was on the police department. I rolled down quite a bit with someone. Oh, he's fine, because I wanted him on the boat and out of here. So it's then the problems resolved from that end of it. I guess we got to try to focus on, as a community, of how do we not have to have that person at that level. So.
Yep. And I agree with that. And I think as you probably know, we're doing liquor licenses in early November. That will be a big discussion. We'll talk a little bit more about it today even. But no matter what, that's a goal. Right. But I guess, unfortunately, people always remember the last thing that happens, right? And the last thing that happens, could have had a beautiful day, but if the last thing that happens is this unruly group next to you that taints the picture, and it taints it for all of us. I mean, it's not just one.
So where did you see these people?
Where, with the calls I've gotten?
Were they calls or?
Yeah, from people I know that had like kids on boats, or a parent on a boat, or,
No, what I was asking, if you saw them or if.
no, these were calls and people who stopped me and just said, hey, my parents,
My only point was, were you seeing them cut back after saying they were never coming again? Because we all get mad and say that.
they said
And
they wouldn't take that boat again,
That boat or the last boat?
the last boat. I mean,
Well, I'm not trying to defend anybody's behavior, but, it's the last boat's not gonna be the best boat off this island.
no, so therefore,
the
let's
end-
plan
at
accordingly
the
and
end
let's
of the
get
long-
somebody
well,
who
that's-
helps out.
Well, that's maybe, yes, Interstate has to do a better job with security, has to do a better job with not advertising alcohol. You took that out and it's not coming back, is that right? The Best Bloody Mary.
Oh,
Your ad led with that.
yeah,
That was-
yeah,
I mean, I know it's a lovely honor in Rhode Island, but my God, this place is becoming Bloody Mary and Mudslide Island. And at least not in the mudslide bandwagon. But I just, that really, it felt to me like that sent a really bad message. I think your ad's goofy. I know a lot of people are tired of it. I just think it's silly and goofy, and it doesn't bother me. But when the the Bloody Mary came on first, that was, oh God, please, we don't need to start this way. People are not going to be, people are on vacation, and they're not going to be responsible, and they want to be here till the last minute. And we see this, everybody wants to go on the last boat. Everybody wants to get off on the, I don't know if anybody does any kind of publicity. One guy last summer came in the shop, and he has kids with him. And I thought, if more people were like him, he'd rented a house, couldn't get his car on the boat back until later in the day. And he said, I planned it. I planned because I couldn't get my car back on. These are the things we're going to do during the day. We're going to go to the lighthouses. We're going to go to the farm. We're going to do the things you can do when you're out of the house. I'm not sitting in a parking lot all day. And that amazes me that people will, I know they want to get home earlier, but I just think that there are more things to be promoted, spend your last day, weather permitting, doing something fun, doing something creative, keeping moving instead of just sitting in a hot parking lot.
You mean like in the standby lane waiting to
Yeah,
get on
the standby.
yes.
It boggles my mind the number of cars that are in that. And people seem never to understand it. The other day, somebody was saying, was it Saturday was the last day you ran? That there were 14 people in standby that got on standby, and they'd called a couple of days before and hadn't been able to get a reservation for Saturday morning, but they could get on standby. It's like, well, because everybody canceled. And the person who was talking about it was saying, well, the Interstate told us there were no reservations. And they've lived here for years, and they couldn't connect that big storm coming. People aren't going to come over Saturday morning, and there would be openings. And there was a good chance standby would, am I making this?
Yes.
Billy understands because
Yeah, I
I've
understand.
known Billy forever, but there's a total disconnect sometimes that people just have this visceral reaction, and that's kind of where it gets back to landing my tangent here. I'm never going to ride that boat again.
I guess the point, Martha, is we want to have people leaving Block Island, leaving the Interstate's experience in a positive way, period. And if the security, in my opinion, if somebody were to say, guys, calm down, that's a benefit.
Do you think one
and I'm not-
person is,
And anyway, so I don't know it's a big deal, but.
well, my question is one person going to do that? Is
Well-
one person adequate to do that?
Well, there's
Is-
a number of things. We also train the crew and so forth, but, even if there's one person's more than none.
Yeah.
So, and inevitably, it's gonna end up being on the other boat, that's the way, that's Murphy's Law. But at least if we make an effort and we try, you know what I mean? And sometimes,
best.
yeah, and sometimes, a lot of things are perception, when there's a police car parked on a road, even if it's not in it, people slow down. So there's things I think to that end that we can do and work together from that end of it.
My second point deals with traffic assessment. Now, you addressed pedestrian traffic, and you might do something similar to what they did during the funeral of the Queen, where you zigzag, so you don't have the long line all the way. That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
Yeah,
Great
and
thinking.
it's not always that we have that long line. It's on the weekends where we get it. And we're not 100% sure what is the best way, but like I said, the fences that we bought, there were 50 of them, of the portable, which would give us a much better way to move it one way or another. We haven't quite figured out exactly what it's gonna be, and I think it's fluid, because it's gonna depend on whether you have 500 people, whatever it might be from that end of it. But I think we can achieve that goal.
All right, I'm not discounting your brain power, but have you ever employed a traffic expert on what might be a better mousetrap for what happens down there?
We are welcome for information from anyone that wants to give it, we'll listen to. And there were, remember Al, the traffic.
Al Davis.
Yeah, Al Davis, he was helpful. He had a bunch of suggestions that we took in. Believe it or not, Dave Helterline has had a lot of good ideas. And sometimes it takes someone that doesn't have just a fresh set of eyes to look at something and say, hey, what about this and that? So we're open-minded to all, to all.
What's the solution then to the standby or the car reservation line that comes all the way out, all the way to the Star Department? Is that just a lack of
I think
employees?
I think you'll find this year, if you don't mind me. Yeah, I think you'll find this year. That was an issue that came up last year. What we used to do is the booth would be closed, only open an hour before. What we tried to do this summer, and we really stayed hard on that, was to keep the booth open so people could come in. There's a twofold to it. If you let them in too early, they leave their cars and walk to town. But we did it anyway, so we opened the booth up and let the cars get on in. Because don't forget, we've changed the configuration down there. It took us about 3 years that all the pickup is in front of the chamber, not over in the freight area. That was a liability because there's too many, from that end of it. Took a long time, but we got them up there. So we try to get that cleared out because we know people are picking up at the same time. I personally, particularly when you get that long line, is on a Saturday morning and a Sunday morning. I usually get on there because I happen to be about 6 and pull those cars on in because we don't want them in the street, and they haven't been on the street. The line would get up, and then we'd get all over the employee to open up and get them in. So that's a priority for us from there. I'm not concerned about the cars in front of the chamber as much because, a guy wants to cut through to go towards Ernie's or Ballard's, use the street, but to make it so the flow goes through from that end of it. So I think we made big headway because the year before that, we got caught off guard a few times, and maybe more than a few times, and it got up to the street and blocked it from that end of it. But I think we've made a lot of progress from that area.
Is it a direct correlation to not having enough employees to open that up earlier so that doesn't happen to begin with? Because I witnessed it a lot in the taxi stand.
I think it's a combination, but I think that this year here, I don't think that the cars were out blocking the streets. I think the line would come on up, and then you'd open up and we'd move it on in. And it's always, they're young employees, you have to stay on them all the time to get them move in, but.
Well, I witnessed a significant amount to bring it forward today. That's just bringing that to your attention. I've had several people approach me about a Thursday boat. There used to be for years the Monday 3 boat and the Thursday 3 boat. Mondays is the day that a lot of doctors take off. Whether they play around at golf or whatever they do, Monday, that's their day off. And as a result, Thursday was always the great day to go to medical appointments. That's gone. It's been gone for the past year or two. Is there any way we can take a step backwards and reinstate that the way it used to be for those people?
Yeah, we had revised the schedule, and we had, was it last year, we had moved the Thursday to the same as the Wednesday schedule, which, as you know, Wednesday used to be a one-trip day, and we made it a 3. So we basically made Thursday the same schedule as Wednesday for consistency purposes. And I have, some people have brought up, that they preferred, the Monday schedule, the old Thursday schedule. And then a lot of people, like the new one too. So I hear it from both sides. Some people like the way it is now. Some people like the way it was before.
Well, the old way gives you a full day on the island. on
It gives you
half a
more
day.
time, yes. No.
And that's what these people, and I think a lot of other people who just haven't come forward want. Could you strongly consider reversing that idea and going back to the old
I guess I
way?
gotta tell you, I don't think you were there when this happened. We used to have these meetings and people would come in and complain, that Thursday was too long a day. You're not gonna, this is the
Yeah.
problem. I mean, you can, whatever, I would rather have a longer day too. I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that I think that was done in part in response to the number of people who would complain that they had to be off island for so long. And, I mean, I never go away, so to me, you use every second you can when you're off. I don't want it shortened.
No,
Well, I discount that argument strongly.
No, I'm just,
When
Mark,
the other
Mark,
argu-
excuse me,
No,
Mark.
I know.
Mark, I
When
was
the-
simply telling you what
Understood.
happened.
When the other argument deals with medical issues, that is so far down the list, if not even just silly. Okay?
yeah,
No,
no.
it's just, I
Well,
was
this
just
it
offering
kind
a
of
factual,
in the works right now. We are going to launch a survey, which Megan can fill you in on. We have a survey going out to survey our customers on the winter schedule and the preferences on the different days. And she could, not right now, sometimes she could.
Yeah, well, so we're getting ready to send out a survey tomorrow, actually, which is gonna touch exactly on this point. It's every schedule through the November through March, every day, the different schedule, and then you can rate it. So we're sending the survey out to all the active Islander cardholders with a current email address. We'll get the email tomorrow, and then on Monday, we're gonna share the link through the bulletin board so that, if there's a typo in your Islander card address or we don't have an updated one, you'll get through the bulletin board. We're also gonna have a QR code posted at the ticket office and on board the ferry where people can take the survey. So we're gonna take those results, and it's really specific to the winter schedule. So we're gonna take that information and get kind of a better idea of exactly who wants what schedule and what they prefer. And then hopefully, with the information from this meeting, from the survey, and from our ridership stuff, we can kind of try to, make sure we're hitting every market and
That is really
demographics.
fantastic. Thank you, Megan. That's a great idea. And I just to sort of follow up on, it's not really a follow-up on Mark, but it is a scheduling question. I like in these kinds of conversations to sort of learn something about the business, like how do you find people? But scheduling is another one, because my experience at least has been, if you hear one person's ideal schedule, all you've learned is one person's ideal schedule. Everybody has what they think would be their ideal schedule, and then you actually have to run a business and apply boats to it. Could you just walk us through kind of what do you think about while you're scheduling? How do you figure out what the right schedule is? What are the variables? I'm really curious about that.
Well, the main thing that we consider is there's so many different competing interests that use the boat. Your islanders, freight is a big one. Cars, commercial trucks is a real big one. Off-island people coming out, workers, salesmen, everybody come out. So there's so many different competing interests for that schedule, and it's a fine balancing act how to to try to do it to keep everybody happy. Of course, you're not going to keep everybody happy with it, but Jeanette's been doing this for a long
know.
time.
Yeah.
If you want to,
There's no right or
little
wrong
insight.
answer, by the way. I'm
Yeah.
curious about.
Yeah.
I'm curious about how
Absolutely right. And I could go back to the days of the hunting on Wednesdays,
Right.
which is why the dates were changed originally. We do take a lot of things into consideration. Right now, there's 5 days where if you live on Block Island, you could go off for the day and return, which is way better than it ever used to be. One thing that was considered a lot is how late in the day we run. If the weather's questionable, like for example on Friday nights, leaving at 6 p.m. to come back that late in the evening, it made sense to leave the boat here on a Friday night, which was implemented, and then it gave the islanders an opportunity to leave on a Saturday morning.
Right.
The length of the days, come in it somehow because, you know, it goes back to the weather thing. Sometimes it's difficult getting in and out. When the weather's questionable, you can't see, et cetera. I mean, you can see, of course, but it's dark. And a couple years, we took into consideration the the kids on Block Island Kids teams and their recreation was a consideration. We do listen to the suggestions that are made, and we have implemented changes along the way, significant changes, actually. And there was we did see an increase in ridership for these 3 trip days at this schedule coming from the mainland, unfortunately.
interesting. Oh,
So it's just the right amount of day for for hours for someone coming over to do, like a contractor, to come over and do the work and leave in the same day. I realize that's not the focus. The focus is to how to accommodate the islanders. Yeah.
I think this idea of a survey is great. I would love, you know, I mean, nothing, I wouldn't want anything proprietary, but I'd just love to hear sort of directionally what people are thinking about this stuff, you know? It would be really interesting. Again, not, you know, whatever's confidential is confidential, but I just think it's the best way to have, you know, an ongoing positive relationship is by just talking about this stuff, right? I mean, it's not, you know, everybody's pretty much got, you know, the same interests at heart, roughly, which is moving people, and that's really helpful. Thank you. That's really great, Megan. What a great idea.
In the survey, there are portions where you can comment, so it's not just answer this multiple choice question. There's some, you know, so if you have something to say regarding that, you know, you can put it in there, so we'll get that information. And following up on what Jeanette was saying, when we ran the Monday-Thursday schedule as the 8:15 off-island, and then we added the Wednesday schedule of, I think it's like a 9:15 off-island from here, or whatever it is, and going back a little earlier, we saw a lot of people shifted from taking the Monday-Thursday and were taking the Wednesday. So that's when we kind of got the idea to say, oh, the people really like this schedule, because our Wednesday, usually we knew Monday and Thursday we were going to be busy. And then all of a sudden, Wednesday was our busiest day of the week for people leaving the island. So it really seemed that those people liked the time frame. Maybe they don't like to get up at 7 a.m. Maybe, like, you know what I mean, or whatever it is. So that's where we, you know, said, let's give this, you know, putting the Wednesday schedule on Thursday a try.
One quick one, are you asking orientation during the survey, meaning commercial trucks? 'Cause that's gonna be a very different response. And as long as then we can cluster those groups, because they often are competing, right? And so, you know, the interest of how you weigh them. So,
Sorry.
oh, I'm sorry, I should have used that
Sure.
one. How you weigh those will be fascinating.
Yes. The second question in the survey is, are you a year-round resident, a seasonal resident / homeowner, and then a non-resident, but you commute to the island for work, or a non-resident and you commute to the island for pleasure? So then you break it out from there, and then there's certain questions according to, you know, what you chose.
That'll
So,
be
yeah, I think it'll give us some great information.
I have two, can I, is it okay? Okay, I didn't want to interrupt your, taking the floor, but.
I just have one other thing to say.
Yeah, please,
about
Jeanette.
that. So regarding, when you're talking about the commercial trucks and things like that, the schedule is structured so that a lot of these people don't want to be here all day because they're paying for somebody who's not doing anything. So the schedule is also adjusted so a majority of these people can go, make their oil delivery, unload their truck, and come back in a reasonable time frame, so they don't have to be here all day. That's a consideration that we take into effect that we have changed and has been very successful at. When you're talking about, Martha, when you were talking about the schedule, did leave earlier from Point Judith, because we would open up, we would look out the window at 3:30, all the cars that were supposed to go back were already there. So we said, this is silly, why do we stay here until 5 o'clock? Everybody's already checked in. We made it 4:45, and I know I'm dating myself, but a lot of the old folks appreciated not getting home so late. When it's dark,
Right.
I know things have changed now, it's not quite the same, but, so, okay.
There are even more of us old people. I just had two really kind of practical questions. One is, when do you have a conversation that doesn't involve parking on Block Island? But, the parking question that I find especially compelling is whether it's possible to reserve a few spots for seniors who are going to doctor's appointments. You know, like, that's, look, I get it. You have, the fact is with our labor profile right now, you have contractor trucks, I understand that. But it does sort of concern me when there are clearly people who struggle to make their boat and have the ability to walk to the boat, walk back to their car, et cetera. So if you would be willing to sort of, I'm not asking you for that's something that we ought to, if we can together, try to figure out.
We talked about this last year.
Yeah, we did, yeah.
And I think we were talking about more so in the dead of the winter when it's dark, it's cold, and they're getting back from that end of it. And we had talked about, and I'll say that I dropped the ball on it, but we had talked about even the possibility.
Thank you for not blaming me.
Yeah. You were supposed to call me. We had talked about even, that Josh had said that section on the bulkhead that faces the water where like the croissant uses, in the wintertime, they don't use that. And we had talked about, even if it was just for the winter trial, if we could make 5 or 10 spaces, senior parking there. And I mean, the way to police it, who knows from that end of it. I mean, we're gonna have, like I said, we have more seniors than there'll be spaces, but on the same token, at least let your conscience, if you're 25, you're going back to it, you're gonna get, somebody's gonna give you the death look if you're going into your car, you're 25 in that area there.
Have you met Cindy's dog?
And we had talked about, and that's something that we might be able to.
Yeah, no, I will definitely look at that.
And it would be a temporary thing, because we don't have that spot in the winter, but it seems like the biggest important is in the summer.
It
but
is
in
a
the
winter
wintertime,
thing,
it's
you know?
something we could probably look at.
Yeah.
And try not try.
Yeah,
Especially the ice and the snow.
Yeah, I don't think it's that's not unreasonable.
yeah.
And like I said, for a trial period, to try it and see, it's something, if Josh felt was.
Yeah, no, I definitely. would
Right,
look at
and
that,
then the other thing, and we were talking about this the other night when we were doing the broadband contract for the entity that's doing like the public facing thing. I was saying to them, it would be worth looking at some of the stuff that Jeff Wright has been doing in terms of being on the bulletin board, telling people what's going on, because not everybody thinks to go to the website, and then this is not an interstate issue. This is the nature of our discourse issue. Okay, sort of at the macro level, but keeping in touch with people about service issues, whether that's by the bulletin board or whether now people can volunteer their cell phone numbers and you can set up an auto texting function or something. But particularly when we have this situation that you guys have had to deal with this week, where the schedule's changing and you're adding boats and you're doing everything you can to move cars and people, or to keep people away from whatever. Being more engaged on that would, because I know it's all about this, would make my life easier, because people, email us and text us saying, what's going on with the ferry? So,
Okay, I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah.
Because I hear this all the time about.
What's the
people
this?
asking this. Why don't people just say, go to their website? Interstate's really good about updating their website.
I'm just curious, who said I didn't say that?
I don't know, but I'm talking about people in general here.
Okay, I thought you were looking at me saying it, and
Because you
yeah,
said it most-
yeah,
You said it most recently.
yes.
But I hear this a lot, and you see the same crazy thing on Facebook, is the boat running. Well, maybe it's not that hard. They're probably as good as anybody about updating their website and keeping the alerts coming out. And why are you asking? I mean, maybe I grew up here and I just feel like I don't
It's
want
not
to
a
go.
function, Martha,
don't
with all
wanna
due
go
respect, it's
through-
not a function of growing up here.
No,
It's
I'm
a
saying,
function of
I'm-
broad-based demand for simple ways to get information. And I
No,
like
I-
the idea of, I look on the website, you look on the website, but not everybody does that.
But that's direct. I mean, why would you go to somebody else if you can get, I guess,
I'm
I don't trust anybody in between. Maybe that's what
Yeah.
I was
So,
gonna say.
if I could comment, just,
that'd be great.
so we do try to really have the information literally as soon
Oh,
as we get the call, we are on the website. That's been,
It's not anything that Meg and I are not doing, trust me.
yes, it's like we know that, and I literally track, I love numbers, and I literally track the analytics. As I'm posting it, I can see the numbers going up on our website. If we say we're posting at 7 a.m., I can see, we go from 20 people on the website to 400 at 7 a.m. So, we really try to do that. We've gotten requests in the past to put stuff on the bulletin board, and the problem we have is we don't control the bulletin board, and, we have so much to do to get that information out in the morning on our website, social media, our ticket of us, our crew, all the customers, calling for, the reservation side of stuff. So, we'll always post that message right up on that website. And if anyone's traveling with us, that's where they should get the information.
And I hope I was clear. I wasn't saying that you guys
No,
were doing anything.
no, definitely. And
By any means.
another point too is, we've been working on, text messaging and email notification type stuff. So that's coming, hopefully. And, so maybe that'll be helpful to people, like, cause they'll actually
think
get it.
that would be
And I think this year, when we, the renewal on the Islander cards, we're gonna have a big renewal this year where we're gonna, update your information, and it's gonna, that type of thing. So Bill will have more information, coming in the winter months on that, but we'll update like cell phones and emails and, if people have changed information or whatever. And so that'll
Yeah, I
help.
think a text blast of some sort.
We're not opposed to the bulletin board for certain applications.
No.
Just like we're doing the survey and we're utilizing that. We recognize
Yeah,
that
it's great.
has, it has a lot of value to it. It's just on certain things, like the schedule,
Cancellations,
cancellation
yeah.
and so forth. We really want them directed there, but we're utilizing it for that. We'll be utilizing it for some of the Islander card stuff and so forth. So we recognize it does have its value for a lot of applications.
To sort of agree with Martha, that we have this need in our culture now to be spoon-fed everything. Like if someone hasn't sat down with you and said, Bill, just so you know, then nobody ever told you, right? But having said that, it also is the way the way it is. So the more you can do easy stuff like that, I use quotes, the better, I think. The happier people.
Most of our employees go to the webpage.
Yes, I'm sure.
But if I,
So do I, but I mean,
but if I can build for a second, because I think the culmination of what Keith just talked about, both, getting on the website, people don't get on the website, but you want to be spoon-fed. This responsibility of the person to make sure you have their text or email in the right format is their responsibility. If they don't give it to you, then hey, and these days you can do as you know better, right? You can do that text blast in 5 seconds, right? And once you have all the data loaded, and then it's sort of, look, it's their responsibility versus you never told me things. And so I think the hard part is you guys added extra boats on today, for example, and trying to manage all the traffic and especially freight. And then, people didn't, because they didn't go on the website. So it's always a conundrum.
Nobody did anything wrong. I just
Yeah.
say,
Yeah,
sure.
no,
The more channels, the better, I guess.
No,
is
right, and you can always call, because our messages were updated as well, and the schedule was on there
And the
too.
website is. I mean, you can
But,
always look at the
I
website.
wanted to say,
the
it's like,
website's
in all
terrific.
else fails, pick up the phone.
Yes. Thank you.
I guess I just think if I can find it, and I knew yesterday the boat schedule was gonna be different today. And I knew yesterday the boat schedule was gonna be different today, because when the weather's bad, what else do you do on Block Island but check the weather and the ferry, because those are the two, well, you do this all, when you're upset, when the weather comes in like this, I wanna know what's going on.
We talked a little, if I can change subjects for a minute, and Bill, I know you talked about the parking lot. I don't have a solution, so it's always easy to come up with a comment and no solution. Um, the area in front of the chamber, and I say that in a large comment, right? So somewhere between the barricade and the chamber, all the way down, is almost an inviting problem, right? Just because you got cars backing out, we all know the situation. And I don't have the solution, but I think somehow, we got to keep working on it. And whether that is somebody who's literally there, you stop, you back up, or, that just seems incredibly laborsome. But it's at times during the 20 minutes of congestion, when the boat comes in, people are getting out, somebody's been waiting, nose in, and then they try and back out, and they're almost hitting the car, waiting in the line, it just, and there are kids all over the place. Somehow, and whatever the town can do to help, but somehow we've got to figure out just making sure it's safe and healthy. Yeah, and I'm not saying anything new, but you were talking about parking before, more in the parking lot. It's just an area that is ripe for a problem.
Yeah, we're constantly looking at the whole lot. Obviously, there's the situation with the cars on the park, and there's over 90 spots over there. Cindy had reached out to me the other day, I know Kay had mentioned it, and it's, until we have a place where we can tow cars to, we're always gonna have a problem with, people slipping.
That's the
in
parking lot.
Yep, I'm gonna get that. From that, we're always going to have that. There's the thing where people come on over that are working on the mainland and their cars are there. Surtex, you mentioned before, I called them and I said, hey, can you park your cars up at the town hall on the weekends and all go down in one, which they did. We have, the problem is we have more vehicles than space.
Yeah. Yeah.
What we did switch over in front of the chamber, what you're talking about, was when we did away from the pickup on the side to
Yes.
make it safer, right? We moved the pickup up to that, and that's that 30-minute, which we're trying to constantly chase cars out of there that end up, and that's an area that we get very heavy on towing because we don't want cars left there, so there is the pickup from there. It's frustrating, I can tell you this, it's been, it's frustrating, it's kind of like Rebecca, when you come around the statue there, you never know who's supposed to go. It's frustrating, but it's fairly safe because there's so much uncertainty on who's supposed to go where. So we haven't had any, and that doesn't mean it can't be improved, okay, from that end of it.
Whether I'm supposed to stop at that stop
I was a police chief and I didn't know we were supposed to. But I know that if I changed it, it was only gonna be, so it's frustrating, but it's safe. But as far as, that has gotten much more heavily congested, obviously because of the pickup. But what has also happened, and I think particularly, Sven, we talking about, if there are cars lined up to get into the lot, and in the summertime, there's so many boats, that tends to happen. This time of year, as we get into the season, you don't have the row waiting to get in, so now you have people parking like on the other side to it. So it's more so in the summertime, I think, when we have.
Oh, I'm only talking summer, really.
Yeah, and that's something that we can look at, we kicked it around, we put the do not enter, I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to come in from the other side, and that helped from there. So, that's something we probably can look at and say, hey, should we bring the cars in from the other side? But for every yin, there's a yang, when you do it,
Yeah.
you create another one, but it's certainly worth looking at.
Yeah. I feel guilty every time I drive around that sign when it says "Don't enter this way." So yes, I know what you're talking about. And I think from my point of view at least, it's the responsibility of the town to manage the road, right, or the police department. So I think it's worked out pretty well the last few years of stopping traffic, going down and trying to get the cars out, or at least working a pattern so that they can get on the road, get out I call it the chute, but get out, from the boat, and then people can start exiting. But I think that's the town's responsibility. But I think as far as traffic and congestion and flow, it's your land, and so I think that sort of goes to the.
Doesn't mean we can't work together.
No. That's what I'm inviting. Yeah, I'm inviting that. And then the only other thing.
Mike, can we back up to track,
Yeah.
the parking?
Yeah.
Because I
Absolutely.
think we said skirting over the parking, and, is the problem, when we talk about the lack of designated spaces.
You're talking about permanent parking?
I'm talking about-
Not permanent, but
I'm talking about the parking.
Towards Old
in-
Harbor.
In the lot, that just seems to get worse and worse who are all these people? I don't expect it.
So the majority of the people, in the lot we're talking about, that's center cluster, right? Because you have the outside where Cross Island has the parking for there. Finn's has opened up, with Finn's being sold, Finn's used to use the parking, but being sold, that's opened up more, about another 10 spaces or so, at least 10 or 12, that for parking from that end of it. So in that whole area of parking, you're talking about, there are cars where people that come over for the day, they're Kenny Tyler's and go work, they'll park their car at 5 o'clock and they leave. And in the summertime, that works out kind of well, because they come over in
I'm
the
only
morning.
talking about wintertime, Billy.
You're talking about the wintertime?
It seems worse you expect it in the summer.
Yeah, I
You
mean-
just have this expectation it's going to be it's going to be tough.
There's,
But winter seems like it's a lot worse.
it's not so much the winter that's the worst, it's this time of year right now, because what happens is, high speed comes in now, usually in the summertime, high speed gets in at 7:30, those workers get off, they get in their car, any local going off knows, hey, let me just wait till 8 o'clock, they're gonna pull out and boom, and I slide into one of those slots. We have this kind of odd time for, I don't know, Josh, whatever. It's like
It gets here at 8:30,
Yeah,
so it gets
8:30
here
sounds
after the
about
Carol
a
G.
month and a half or whatever the schedule changes, the high speed gets in at 8:30. Meanwhile, the 8:15 has already left, so you come down, they haven't gotten their cars set left yet. So now if you come down at 8:30, if you come down after that high speed gets in, you're gonna find about a dozen spots open. So there's that window and I think it happens in the spring.
Spring in the fall this
In
time,
the
yeah.
fall, where
The
there's that
shoulder season.
overlap, where it is, so you'll get on the 8:15, there's nothing. Once the high speed gets in, there's a bunch that free up at that time.
Yeah.
And so that happens and it's frustrating, and it happens in the fall and the spring. Like I said, in the summertime, most people that travel all the time say, hey, let me wait, I don't cut it, wait 8 o'clock, they're gonna get in the car and leave, and a few will open up at that point. You know, so.
But it is a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, but the big thing we really tried to focus on was the abandoned cars, and that was another problem that we had. You know, people would take a car, let's put it in the parking lot down there, because if it's up here, there's nowhere to tow it. And this gets back to what we know, if there's a spot that can tow, so let's just stick it in the lot down there, and then we were stuck with it, we got those cleaned out.
Is this a RIAC meeting?
Oh.
Is it shame on us for not having a tow lot that you guys could use?
I don't wanna say shame on you, I think it's a problem that, going back even when I was a chief, you know, Peter would tell him when he had his mom's house, he put him up there until it got to the point where he got a zoning violation. I think it's one of these things that we gotta seriously look to work as a community,
Yeah.
look to say, let's find some type of spot that doesn't become a junkyard also, you know what I mean? And if we do that, I think it's not gonna solve all the problems, but it's gonna head us in the right direction.
And just tow lots are a big problem because usually that's where the towing companies make their money, right? So they want to own the land so that when you don't pick up the car, it's an extra $50, and that's
Sure.
that. So for the town to own the lot, I mean, it gets to be a little bit of a question, but we need to solve it. We need to have a place to bring cars. That's the real thing. The only other last thing, and Martha to be back if we want to talk about parking, that I have on my list, and Josh, I'm going to say this, we're going to say it a lot on November 3rd when we talk about liquor licenses. We are, and we talked a little bit about it before, we're going to be really starting to, I use the word tighten down on open containers, leaving designated serving areas with containers, things like that. And it's really, it's a statement to everybody. So, you know, folks, nobody should be walking onto your property with an open container. Same way, nobody should be leaving the boat with an open container. And I'm saying it again, it's going to be repeated 30-some times in the next few weeks. But any help you can do it. I don't think a lot of people leave the boat with a container. I've never started with an open container, but if you can just have the crew keeping an eye on that, that would be great. Usually everybody's trying to juggle 3 dogs and 6 bags, and any drink is gone. It's already on their pants.
Yeah.
I was going to say that next year, and that next year will be a big part of our push to inform people about open containers, inform people about safety and health. So I think the town manager will be talking to you and the team, but any way you can help with that, and maybe, you know, whether we do some of the visual ads on the displays and come up with some program that we would fund and help with. But I think we need to make sure that we inform people, because so many people this summer, and I didn't stop. I talked to many people, probably at least 50 independent situations where I went up to people our age and I said, I don't really think you're supposed to have that drink here. This is private property. It was your lot. And they were like, what are you talking about? We just came from, this place and, we're going to that place. And I said, yeah, but you're on private property with an open drink. And they said, yeah, it's Block Island. And I said, do you do that at home? Oh, no, this is Block Island. And by that point, they were 17 steps beyond, and that was the nice person.
Yeah.
You know what happens when the not nice person has a response.
Yeah,
I just I took a drink away from somebody.
Well, I'm not about to go there, but.
Did it taste good?
It was empty. Darn it, it was empty.
So if you can help with that, that would be great.
yeah, Mary Ann did contact us this summer, and it took us a few days, but we did add an announcement for, open container law on Block Island. So, yeah, we're more than happy to work with you guys. And as far as doing other, public announcement, not necessarily PA, but other announcements, we'll be more than happy to work with you on that.
And hopefully if we can get a police chief in here soon, he can sort of be the point person with Mary Ann and Bill and others, just to figure out how we can coordinate that kind of stuff. Because
Sure.
we've got to tighten this up. And as an island, and back to the earlier comments. So. Other things, we paused on parking for a minute once you left, so.
I mean, I don't have any solution. I just want it to be acknowledged that it's a big problem. It's up at the airport, and it's a big problem up at the airport. Everybody, it feels like people don't leave their cars at home. Take them to the airport and leave them, and take them to the boat and leave them. I don't think they're supposed to.
What can we do better to help you guys? That's the first time you've ever been asked that by the town, hasn't it? Yeah, I knew that.
No, I feel we have a good working relationship with the town. I feel like we've always have had that. As far as the police going, Bill has a good relationship with even the interim chief this summer. Good relationship with him. I feel that worked out fine. Bill, any?
Yeah, no, we also, last year we were talking about how to get reservations in the medical center and so forth. We put that system in where, they contact me, they have my cell, they contact me directly. That seemed to have really worked out well with Marie Anderson and Dr. Walkoff as far as we getting the rescues off and so forth. That whole system's worked out well from there. No, I think in general, I think the communication flow has been pretty good. We have a good working relationship with the police department, as you know. One of the things we did in the past, it always comes up about coolers on, Vinnie Carlone had, Chief Carlone back, had a few forth about when he had the problems on the beach with the coolers. He had taken all if there were large groups of kids, put the coolers on a pallet and shrink wrap them. That's something I'm gonna speak to the new chief about, saying, hey, if you wanna do that on those big holidays, because what they would do is that we put the pallet on the side, the policeman would be there, and then he could actually, or she could say, hey, listen, we're about to drink and so forth. And there's always a cooler too that get left behind from the 17. Yeah, from the 17-year-old, and then that becomes a happy day for the freight guy. But I think those type of things, I think we can work together to do those. I mean, that worked out really well, and I think that's something we should, try to coordinate again with from there. But I think half of it is the communication that we have from that end of it.
Did we talk about rates?
Not yet.
Okay.
Go ahead.
We always have this conversation about car rates and passenger rates. I don't think anybody wants to have rates like Nantucket. But is it time to revisit that? I mean, we just have so many cars over here. And it seems to be cheaper to bring a car over than to have a car on the mainland, and people bring 6 cars for their 12-person rental house, and theoretically, you bring your car because it's full of, theoretically, you bring your car because it's full of the stuff that you're gonna need for vacation, but then once it's here, well, you're gonna use it. I mean, a handful of people don't, but I think most of them do. And it does feel, the last few years, I think a large part of this, the cars are just getting so much bigger that you really, I mean, you feel it on the boat when you used to be able to like open the doors and get out, and now it's like, And our rate increases or tariff reshuffling in the cars, I know you're always looking at these things, but where are you?
Rate making, as you know, can be a complicated
Yeah.
issue. And one of the things that we do in order to make rates, and needs to be approved by the PUC, is we do what's called a fully allocated cost of service study. And those are a lot of words, and basically what it means is that whatever is being carried on the boat, it should pay its own way. So, um, they, a study is done, and the study is done on all the square feet on the boat and how it's used. And so basically, they then take a look at that, and they come up with a rate based on how much space you're using on the boat. And there's some other factors that go into how much labor might be involved, more labor to load individual items or even pallets than it is to just back a boat back a truck on boat filled with stuff. So all that goes into the mix, and then the allocated cost of service study gets litigated, to which you guys have participated in some years, and some years you haven't. And then the PUC approves a rate. And the rate is primarily based on the square footage that is used on the deck. And so that's kind of how, a simplistic way of how the car rate is set. What we would be talking about if we wanted to increase the rate so that somebody taking a car over was actually paying more than what they're using, that would be a policy decision. And it doesn't mean that the PUC can't make changes based on policies that it thinks are worthwhile, because it does that fairly regularly. But that would be something where they would be looking for the town to weigh in on that. So when we file our next rate case and we file our cost of service study, and we say, we've done our numbers, and here's what it works out to for an average size passenger car, here's what it works out to for a truck, here's what it works out to for an oversized, and we have all these different rates for that. But it's, again, it's based on a fairly simplistic notion. If you think that should be modified, then I think you need to weigh in at the PUC and say, the island feels that cars should pay more. And then you need to say why. And this is where it gets really tricky, because if you say, because we want less cars on the island,
No,
that's
no,
not
because they use the wear and tear on the roads, obviously, Mike.
Okay.
And health and safety on the highways, come on.
There you go.
And when's the next rate?
Well, that is something, we don't have one currently pending, we don't have one in process. So there's not one coming up in the immediate future. But that's the process for getting it done.
And one could, if you wanted to, ask for a rate change at any time, is that right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So if the town were compelled to ask you guys for a rate change based on health, safety, road work, et cetera, that's something that you would consider discussing?
Well, always consider,
No, I mean, in other words, we would talk about it and decide how we go forward.
we can talk about it, yes. But the way it works at the PUC usually is that the utility proposes the rate change.
Right.
And then interested parties weigh in on
Yep.
that proposed rate change in terms of things that they think should be changed,
Right.
approved, not approved, et cetera. It would be unusual for the town to drive that. In other words, I've never seen that happen before. So, what happens is the window of opportunity opens up, and it's a 9-month window. A rate change takes 9 months from the date of filing to the date of approval at the PUC, and they usually use every single day of that. But it does give you the opportunity to weigh in. And the best thing to do by far is to hire an expert. Hire an expert, because if you don't have expert testimony, the PUC is not going to take you seriously.
But that was,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. But it was interesting, though, you're talking about the size of the vehicles being a factor in your calculations,
How much space they use on the deck.
which obviously leads to, do you have any expectation? I know you've been doing a lot of work on some of your vessels. Do you have any expectation of having to build a new craft in the near future?
As far as traditional, no, there's no plans for traditional boats. We did apply a couple years ago to build a new high-speed, a record high-speed, which was the division had denied us that. But no, there's no plans for those right now.
Just as an FYI, not for discussion, uh, an idea that's been floated around is for us to work with the state, DOT, DEM, RIPTA, to get a satellite parking area and shuttle people, so they have parking on the other side, shuttle them to the boat to correct this problem. Again, not for discussion, but we're working on something like that.
On the Point Good side? Yeah. Okay.
That's been discussed for many years. I was part of that Galley Planning Commission 20 years ago.
It's not longer, yeah.
And, they were talking about parking garages.
Well, it worked out well.
Yeah.
You obviously did.
But yes, that's been under discussion, and they, as you know, they do it in other places. So, I mean,
Sure.
it's not unique.
That's what the steamship authority does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you've got better connections over there. What is going on in Galilee? Any kind of updates, or is it still where?
No update on what's going on. I can tell you that, only what you guys already know,
Yeah.
which is that they put it out to bid, and then they rejected all the bids, and they're taking another look at it, and so we'll have to wait and see. It's all up to DEM.
And if you had any inside information, you couldn't tell us because we'd have to shoot you anyway.
If I had inside information that I couldn't tell you, I would tell you I couldn't tell you. But, no, I don't have anything. So, well, I have been in the loop in the past, but, I've not been brought into this loop in this round of Galilee discussions. I don't know why they haven't asked the ferry.
Sure.
It's kind of surprising.
Very.
That's interesting.
Yeah, not thinking about,
where I was going.
yeah. Given the players that are involved in that one, I'm not really surprised, but they should have, could have.
It's just DEM now, isn't it?
Well, but the person who owns, or anyway, who has the lease on, anyway.
I do have a few items myself when it's the right time.
Yeah, well, why don't you go ahead and then Andy, you okay, or you have building on this?
I just have one question about if I could.
Andy Transu.
Right, Andy Tracy. I think if you're gonna raise the prices on the cars, it would have to be, really a strong increase to dissuade people from bringing cars over. Because if it's only 10 or 20% more than parking at Point Judith, then the convenience of having a car on this side will still bring it. So, I mean, it would have to be a huge increase, I think, in cost to slow down the traffic out here. Whether you could ever get that to fly, I don't know.
I apologize, yes. Yeah, it is. And this regulation would, from November through the end of May, reduce the speed of all our vessels to 10 knots or less. And if that happens, the trip goes from roughly an hour to roughly an hour and a half. And if you think making a schedule under the current circumstances is tough, you can only imagine what it would be like if the trip was an hour and a half each way. That, we are very much opposed to that. We are not the only ones. There are other ferries that are involved in that. You've got the Martha's Vineyard Ferry, the Steamship Authority. And we are working on preparing comments to the proposed federal regulation that was issued by Commerce. What we're going to be asking for is that they not do that. And we hope that the town provides comments opposing this regulation, because I just can't even imagine how difficult it's going to be if that actually goes into effect. In addition to it being during the off-season of November through May, the regulation also gives them the opportunity, if there is a sighting of a right whale at any time, which could be on the 4th of July weekend, to implement immediately this 10-mile-an-hour restriction. That would totally eliminate the ability of us to use the high-speed ferry in the summertime. And one thing that I think we've discussed in the past is that the fact that the ferry is making profits, and that those profits, we'll be able to use those profits for things like, now we're going to eliminate the fuel surcharge, or to improve our vessels. Invested a lot of our profits into vessels improvements lately, as you're all aware, is almost exclusively as a result of the high-speed ferry. The company is divided into two accounting divisions. We have a high-speed ferry division and we have a traditional ferry division. The traditional ferry division always loses money, a lot of money, and the high-speed ferry division makes a lot of money. All the money eventually goes into one big pot, but the reality is that without the profits from the high-speed ferry, you're going to have huge losses on the traditional ferry side, and the only way to fix that is going to be with significant rate increases. So this idea, especially when, and we've spoken to the Passenger Vessel Association, we're unaware of any of the ferries in this proposed new zone that have ever run into a right whale or even seen one. If you look at where the whale watching vessels go, they're off other areas off Massachusetts. They're not happening in this area over here. So it's a solution in search of a problem. And we really think that a strong offensive push on this to try to persuade Commerce to drop this proposal is important. And the comment period was extended. It was going to end at the end of September, but it's extended through the end of this month. And so we're hopeful that you guys will join with us in your own comments, and we're happy to assist in any way that we can. I've got kind of a bullet point list of things that we've put together. I'd be happy to share that with your lawyer if you'd like me to. But if you guys could oppose this regulation and explain how this would impact the island and this community if this were to be implemented, I think would be very persuasive. One good thing is that Gina Raimondo is the Secretary of Commerce. She knows Rhode Island. She vacations on Block Island. We're not going to be talking to somebody who has no idea what the impact would be. So this is something that we need to put the kibosh on, if at all possible, and we'd hope to get your support.
So Mike, if I can, thank you for that. And if you can please send that document to James,
I will.
you can send it to the town manager if it's easier, and then she can get it to James. Or
Okay.
we should make sure you two connect anyway. So we should do that in the next day or two. We do have a council meeting coming up in the middle of the month. I don't know the exact date. And what we need to do is then get it on an agenda, or at least figure out a way to discuss it. I can't speak for the council, obviously, but based on your request, we should have a discussion about it and figure out where the council is and how we then act. Heard a lot about this and from different sources, so it's obviously a topic that's alive in Rhode Island. And I think if you can get that information and then our solicitors can help us understand all the issues and all the topics, that would be a big thing.
I really appreciate it. The problem, of course, is that time is short.
That's why you said the middle of the month. I mean, we have,
Meeting on the 19th, I think.
is it, I just can't remember the day, but it's like the 19th or something of that nature. So the sooner you can get that to James and Mary Ann, the better, which means we can get it on the agenda. More importantly, we can get a little smarter, because I don't think most of us are that smart on this topic, and that would be helpful. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other questions from folks? Ms. Bowdy?
Cindy Bowdy. I would just like to revisit the parking issue here. I thought it was pretty bad at Somerville. The few times that I did go off on the 8:15, I went down at 7:15 to try to find a parking space. Couldn't, had to return home, call a friend to come pick me up and drop me at the ferry. That means that person would have to come back in late afternoon. When I walked through some of the cars, there were no parking cars over and over and over again, or they were long expired. I don't mean like just an extra day. They were long expired. So I think something really needs to be done. And I get the issue about towing, and I understand that's a problem. But these are people that are deliberately parking there, and they don't care. So it is a problem.
Yeah, and,
Yeah, yeah.
I agree with you. There are times where, whether it be in Pleasant, where that had lapsed. I can say this, though, the percentage of the majority of cars were people that went off on the boat as to parking there and going to work, say, at, the National, whatever it might be from that end of it. And I know it is frustrating, when you get a pass, you hang it up there, going to go tow it, and you look and there's one next to it that didn't get one. Because personally, I want to have that car towed, so it only happened once from that end of it. The big issue was that we did have was there were some abandoned cars, which I think would have cleaned up. And the other problem we had, just like when the town, they did a great job on the parking on Old Town Road about putting up the signs, moving the cars. Well, those cars, they moved, and I'm sure one or two probably ended up in our lot with it from that end of it, from that end of it there, with that also. And like I said, at 8 o'clock, if you went back, a lot of those people for the day, they might have opened up, and that's not, I can understand if you're going off, it's not comfortable to say, I only have 15 minutes, I hope someone gets in the car and leaves. So I understand it from that end of it also, but we'll try to be more vigilant on the pass part.
I would appreciate that, and I'm sure
Yeah.
I'm not the only one.
No, and we share your frustration because we don't, two things. One, we want our customers parking there, and we realize it will be full at some point, no matter what. As long as there are customers, we want that, and we don't want to tow our customers. You know what I mean? From that end. What we don't want is people that are having breakfast at Ernie's or going to Ballard or the National parking the lot, or employees. I mean, there were some kids from Ballard's. I mean, it didn't take long to figure out that, hey, if we all get in the car, we drive down, we buy a ticket that go off, we can park there for 2 days. And it was, I give them credit because they were thinking, but I mean, it's that type of thing. Yeah, they were doing, there were 4 of them, and it only cost them each, $3, and it was for 2 days, so
That's why your ridership went up.
We're frustrated also with it, and we'll continue to try that.
Yeah, and on a positive note, I do want to say that last winter, the changes that you guys made, Jeanette and Megan, with getting our reservations, starting in January, was so much smoother, so much smoother. And the last positive comment, they are the best Bloody Marys.
Any other questions? David Lewis?
I have a stand over here so I can look at that and so they'll probably get, hopefully. David Lewis, so.
Give that man a microphone.
No, it's okay. Remember that. Oh, and Mike's turning it on. Bill didn't know how.
I think most of you know the way I feel about the evolution of the boat service over the decades. And, it's been an evolution that's been to the benefit of your company and of the island community. And you look around you and most of the things you see are good. So, including the website, the origin of the website has done several iterations of growth and improvement, and continuous improvement is the mark of any good company, and any good community, by the way. So this is hopefully an easy request. You've done a spectacular job, as witnessed in the last couple of days, with the online announcements about all of the dynamic boat schedule changes and cancellations, et cetera. It's been my personal observation, and I rely on that very heavily, that adding a timestamp on those entries would be helpful, because I know I look at it frequently enough that even I get confused sometimes, know whether I saw this message earlier or is it the same one that was there earlier? Is this a new one? So that would be helpful if you could incorporate that on your postings as well. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. That's a good suggestion, thank you. Sometimes I try to put updated before it, but
Right.
that's.
But it's hard to know when you're doing it, especially as weather's changing
Yeah, those things
hourly.
aren't easy to write, by the way.
Oh.
We hope to, we expect to,
Yeah, it's just, you should just have 3 sentences, and just rotate them, you know?
And there was one thing I just wanted to touch base on. Cindy had brought up, and to Jeanette and Megan's credit, they did that new, and you can elaborate more if you want, that system last year where people would call up and they opened it up in chunks for summer
Yeah.
reservations. One of the things that they implemented last year was you could only make a car reservation for 2 cars when you call. So if someone was renting a house and they had 5 cars, whatever it be, they didn't, correct Jeanette, they didn't allow them at that end of it. So did it mean that they didn't take more cars? No, but they had to get the back of the line and do it that end of it. So I thought that was a good measure that they did last year. And the first year doing, I'm sure you got some feedback from people. But
We got positive and negative feedback, because a lot of people were annoyed that they would have to call back a second time. But all in all, I think that people felt it was a fair way for everybody to get a reservation for their rental.
Marianne and James, do you guys have anything you want to add in? I don't see a hand up, but
So,
I just want to check.
I can jump in really quickly here. Thank you. Just to follow up on a couple of really quick points that was made, specifically, Josh, what I would like to be able to do, we started good way through the summer with this. We're looking for everyone to partner in regard to, drinking in open containers. I would like to have that announcement that we worked on. We're going to refine that announcement, but if possible, if we can start that in the beginning of the summer, probably around Memorial Day through the end of the year, as you folks are pulling in, and reminded folks that open containers are not allowed in Block Island or on Rhode Island general laws, and therefore folks should not be having open containers, and remind folks as they're exiting the boat to dispose of any open containers that they may have. And also, I want to work with Megan. Megan and I spoke. I would like to follow up and work with her about putting something on the videos that you folks have on your boats, so that we can remind people of appropriate behavior as relates to open containers and other things on the island. The council has touched on a number of points that I have that I would like to discuss. So at this point, I'm not going to repeat them, but I do appreciate that you folks, when I did call and ask for the announcement on the boat, that it was immediately done, which was extremely helpful. So I appreciate that.
James, anything?
No, I spoke to Mike a few weeks back. I think made some progress, and looking forward to communicating more about all these issues. And I think the conversation was pretty productive.
And James, I think Mike's going to be in touch with you on the right whale discussion, and we'll figure out how to move forward, or what to do with that, how to have a discussion about it at the next council meeting. Any other comments, questions?
I'd like to finish up by thanking Interstate for their support and overwhelming generosity, whether whether it be the Lions Club, whether it be the school, whether it be the fire department, whether it be the medical center. You've always been there as a strong ally and a strong supporter. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
With that, seeing no other questions in the audience or no hands up, no comments from anybody else, Jeanette's ready. I move to end the meeting. Any second? Martha, yeah? Everybody said yes? Thank you guys very much. Really appreciate it. Mike, let's plan on the 19th. I don't know where that conversation will go, but let's plan to have that on the 19th. Thank you all for joining.